Greetings, dear friends, and welcome once more. We are delighted to have you with us today. We have an enchanting tale to unveil for you. Allow me to introduce myself. I am Daniel, and for what feels like an eternity, I have been captivated by the allure of life's most enchanting moments. In the tender moments of my life, I believed I had discovered the essence of a perfect marriage. It was serendipity that led me to Amelia, and from our very first encounter, I found myself utterly enchanted by her. She possessed an enchanting ability to make everyone feel cherished, and I was no exception to her allure. From the outset, it was clear that her dreams revolved around a traditional family life. She often spoke of the joys of being a devoted mother, nurturing children, and crafting a home brimming with love. I admired her vision and wholeheartedly embraced it, for I too yearned for a family, a sanctuary filled with warmth and laughter. The initial 2 years of our union were a tapestry woven with blissful moments. When Amelia revealed the news of her pregnancy, my heart soared with joy, and I found myself lost in a reverie, trying to fully grasp the beauty of her words. This was the moment I had longed for. I drew her into my embrace, holding her close. The dream of becoming a father, of having a little one to cherish and nurture, was finally within reach. Could this truly be happening? I asked, and she nodded, a soft laugh escaping her lips. The weeks that followed felt like a dream, and I began to weave plans, ensuring we were fully prepared in my mind. This was the dawn of a beautiful new chapter, one brimming with love, growth, and a happiness that seemed plucked from the silver screen. Little did I know, beneath the surface, a different narrative was quietly unfolding, one that would transform my excitement into heartbreak. Yet, in that moment, I was simply a man elated at the prospect of fatherhood, blissfully unaware of the truth that lay ahead as Amelia entered the final stretch of her pregnancy. Complications arose, and the doctor advised her to remain in the hospital for monitoring. The thought of her alone in a sterile room unsettled me, so I made it my mission to visit her at every opportunity. Before work, after work, even during my lunch breaks, I was there, devoted and present. I wanted her to feel enveloped in support, to understand that she was not navigating this journey alone. Though fatigue often clouded her, I sensed a warmth in her appreciation for my presence. Yet, there was an intriguing twist in our routine: the food requests. Amelia would text me, yearning for a specific dish, sometimes something as simple as a sandwich from her beloved deli or a certain brand of juice she adored. I would drop everything, eager to bring her comfort. However, upon my arrival at the hospital, I discovered she had already indulged in the very meal I had rushed to procure. When I inquired, she would merely shrug and say, "Oh, a friend brought it." I assumed it was one of her girlfriends or perhaps a nurse she had grown fond of, but whenever I pressed for a name, she would dismiss it lightly, claiming it was just someone who happened to be there. It left me puzzled. If she had someone catering to her cravings, why did she still seek my offerings? At the time, it seemed a trivial matter, yet it lingered in the air, charged with unspoken possibilities. In those fleeting moments of anticipation, as Amelia awaited the arrival of our little miracle, I found myself captivated by the delicate preparations that needed to be in place for the new life about to grace us. I have elegantly placed security cameras throughout the house, not only in the baby's room but also in strategically chosen areas within, ensuring a watchful eye over our cherished sanctuary. When Chase entered the world, words failed to capture the exquisite sensation that enveloped me the moment I cradled him in my arms. A wave of intoxicating emotions swept over me. I gazed at Amelia, weary yet radiant, and in that moment, a wave of triumph washed over me. I signed the birth certificate with unwavering conviction, embracing my role as his father, determined to offer him a life filled with love and wonder. At that instant, nothing else held significance, not even the mundane tasks awaiting me at work. I had grown weary of my predictable routine. I felt compelled to check in on my family, curious about how your wife and child were faring. As I accessed the security camera feed on my phone, I anticipated a glimpse of Amelia, perhaps cradling Chase to sleep or relaxing on the couch. To my surprise, I found a man seated beside her, engaged in conversation. his presence eliciting a radiant smile from her as she leaned in closer. The most unsettling moment came when he tenderly lifted Chase, gently bouncing him while Amelia watched. Her eyes filled with a warmth that stirred something deep within me. My mind wandered as I gazed at the screen, captivated by the enigmatic figure before me. Who could he be? A distant relative, perhaps, a long-lost cousin or a charming acquaintance from the office. The possibilities danced tantalizingly in my thoughts. I have no idea. Amelia had never mentioned anyone like this, and when I checked the earlier clips showing when the man came, Amelia had kissed him passionately immediately. He stepped in. It's obvious something is going on. Amelia doesn't know I installed cameras in both the living room and around the house. The one in the nursery is the only one I ever mentioned when I installed them for watching over Chase. She must have assumed that was the only one in the house she had no idea I had placed. Others in the living room and entryway for extra security, and now because of that I was seeing the things she did while I was at work. But here's the thing, I didn't call her immediately. I planned to confront her when I get home. When I got home that evening, the house was quiet. I stepped into the bedroom and found Amelia on the bed fast asleep with Chase beside her, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm of sleep. For a moment I just stood there watching them. If I hadn't seen what I saw on the security cameras earlier, I would have believed that this was the picture of a perfect family. But now everything felt like a carefully crafted lie. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to stay calm. Waking Amelia up now wouldn't do any good. That's when my eyes landed on her phone, sitting right there on the nightstand, screen down. I knew that I could get more secrets from her phone. If she was having some sort of affair outside, I picked up the phone and pressed the side button. There was no passcode. I opened her messages, combing through the chats she had today. There were some with people I know, friends and family. And then I saw a female name I can't recall knowing. I tapped the chat and my entire world tilted just by going through message after message. It was clear. This was not merely a woman updating a man about her pursuits. She had even shared intimate glimpses through messages. He was the figure I glimpsed through the lens, and her final note to him was a coy, "Thank you for coming around." As I delved deeper into each exchange, the truth unfurled before me, confirming the suspicions that had long haunted my heart. She had been weaving a web of deception. She had the audacity to whisper to him that Chase was his son, all the while knowing the truth of my paternity. For months, I was ensnared in a web of deception, believing I was the father. The urge to confront her and extract the truth was overwhelming. Yet I found myself paralyzed, caught in the delicate dance of our tangled emotions. I found myself seated in the living room, enveloped in a hush, contemplating how all that had transpired was but a delicate facade. I had perused every message and gazed upon every photo she had shared with him. There was no space for uncertainty. I possessed all the evidence that revealed a clandestine affair unfolding right beneath my gaze. A soft rustle from the bedroom caught my attention, and moments later, Amelia emerged, her eyes still heavy with sleep, appearing both enchanting and vulnerable as she noticed me waiting there. Her smile was enchanting. "Hello, darling," she spoke, arching her back in a graceful stretch. But I withheld my smile, maintaining a calm demeanor as I inquired about the visitor of the day. Her expression shifted dramatically, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "Who are you referring to?" she asked, shaking her head as if to dismiss the notion. I leaned back, observing her closely, sensing her attempt to weave a web of deception. "Let's not play games, Amelia," I said softly, my gaze unwavering. "I saw him on the cameras." After a moment of silence, she relented, her resolve crumbling. "All right, fine," she conceded, the tension hanging delicately in the air. She caught sight of a man approaching, but it wasn't what one might assume. "Just a friend," she insisted. "A friend?" I questioned. "A friend who received pictures of Chase and updates about his doctor's appointments." I held up her phone, reminding her of the affectionate terms she used in her texts. Her expression changed, revealing a hint of vulnerability. She no longer attempted to refute my claims. Instead, she clung to a different point of contention. "Unbelievable," she hissed. "You went through my messages. How utterly intrusive, Daniel. Can you fathom the depths of that situation?" I gazed at her, nearly in disbelief, overwhelmed by the audacity of it all. She chose to fixate on this moment, not on the betrayal that lingered in the air, nor on the web of deceit she had spun for what felt like an eternity. Instead, Her attention was drawn to the fact that I had uncovered her secret. "Can you believe it?" I inquired softly, my voice barely above a whisper, as she crossed her arms, a hint of defiance in her posture. "Indeed, I'm quite earnest in my feelings. Do you truly doubt my loyalty? Is it acceptable to keep secrets from your own beloved?" I chuckled, my heart racing. "Are you truly uttering those words to me in this moment?" I gently shook my head, a hint of mischief dancing in my eyes. "I've reached my limit, Amelia. I simply lack the energy for this any longer." I rose gracefully and made my way toward the guest room, but paused to glance back. "By the way," I said, my voice steady yet laced with an undercurrent of resolve, "I'm arranging a paternity test for Chase. This marriage is over." With that, I stepped out, leaving behind the remnants of a once happy life. The following morning, I awoke with a fierce determination, unwilling to linger in the depths of sorrow. After preparing myself, I drove directly to the office of the divorce lawyer I had contacted the night before. Sitting in that waiting room felt almost dreamlike. Just days prior, I had believed in the illusion of a perfect family, and now I was orchestrating the end of my marriage. When I finally met the lawyer, I laid bare my truth. The video of the man who had visited my home while I was at work, the incriminating messages I discovered on Amelia's phone, and the unsettling uncertainty surrounding Chase's paternity. The lawyer listened intently, then stated, "Before we proceed, we must establish paternity. If Chase isn't yours, that alters everything." I consented and orchestrated a DNA test later that day, but obtaining Chase's sample proved to be a challenge in itself. Amelia feigned confusion, pretending to be wounded by my request, even going so far as to accuse me of paranoia. Yet, when I stood my ground, she ultimately relented. I visited the clinic to submit my sample, and the time that stretched between the test and the results felt like an eternity. When the results finally arrived days later, my heart raced with anticipation. It became evident that the chance of paternity was utterly non-existent. Chase was not my son. I found myself seated, gazing at the paper before me, unable to fathom the revelation it held. For months, I had believed I was his father, and now, the truth unveiled itself with an undeniable clarity. I found myself ensnared in a web of deception, and so I made my way back to the lawyer's office with a heart full of tumult. I presented him with the results and suggested we proceed with the divorce. My voice remained composed, yet within me, I felt a tumult of emotions as I took that step. I had imagined the process would be straightforward. I possessed undeniable evidence of the clandestine romance. I discovered the truth through a DNA test, revealing Chase was indeed my child. I entered the courtroom with hope, believing that justice would prevail. Yet, I soon realized that fairness often eludes the halls of justice. Amelia, the very woman who shattered my trust, refused to simply accept our divorce and move on. Instead, she sought to claim half of everything I held dear, half of the house, half of my savings, half of the life I had built, despite being the one who strayed from our vows. The audacity of her demands was almost comical, but as I sat there, listening to her lawyer portray me as the villain, the humor faded swiftly, replaced by a stark reality that was anything but amusing. Her lawyer wove a captivating narrative, skillfully portraying Amelia as the unsuspecting victim in this intricate tale. She was a devoted stay-at-home mother, yearning for affection from a husband whose ambitions kept him distant. They whispered that she had no option but to find solace in another's embrace. They painted her as delicate, heartbroken, and in dire financial straits. Meanwhile, I was cast as the aloof, distant figure who had forsaken his family. None of it held truth. Yet, the way they wove the tale, one might believe I was the true betrayer. The most disheartening part? The court seemed to indulge their narrative. Even after the DNA test revealed I was not Chase's father, and despite the messages that showed her confiding in another man about Chase's life as if they were a family, the judge still ruled that Amelia deserved to compensate. She gracefully departed, taking with her a considerable share of my hard-earned wealth and possessions, none of which she truly deserved. She had no claim to that verdict, which should have shattered me. Yet, it did not, for in the end, No sum of wealth could alter the undeniable truth. Amelia was out of my life for good. While she may have departed with a portion of my fortune, I emerged with my freedom. However, I would soon discover that this was not the conclusion of Amelia's intricate web of manipulation and avarice. 2 years had slipped by since the divorce, and I had finally begun to piece my life back together. The journey was fraught with challenges. The betrayal, the deceit, the courtroom battles, all left me weary, yet my ex-wife seemed untouched by the turmoil she had caused. She had spent her settlement with a carefree abandon, as if it were mere pocket change. Whispers from mutual acquaintances suggested that she was without a proper occupation, leaving an air of intrigue around her choices. With no steady income and her savings dwindled, she had danced through life, spending as if the well would never run dry. But one fateful afternoon, reality came knocking. I was in my office, finishing up some paperwork, when my secretary's voice broke through the silence, laced with a caution that hinted at something amiss. "My dear sir, a woman awaits your presence, claiming her need is urgent." A sense of foreboding washed over me from the very start. "What is the name of that enchanting lady?" I inquired, and she revealed that her name is Amelia, if only for a fleeting moment. I found myself seated in silence, the years stretching between us like an unbridgeable chasm, and I felt no inclination to alter that. A sigh escaped my lips as I contemplated telling her I was occupied. Yet Amelia had always possessed a tenacity that defied dismissal. Moments later, the doors to my office swung open, and there she stood, a vision of determination. "Daniel, please," she began, stepping closer with an alluring confidence. "I find myself in need of a touch of assistance, a gentle nudge to regain my footing." Leaning back in my chair, I folded my arms, a playful eyebrow arched in inquiry. "You mean funds?" I asked, intrigued. She nodded with a quickness that hinted at urgency. "Just a modest loan, nothing extravagant. I shall repay you, my dear. I must confess, things have been rather challenging, and I made the difficult decision to sever ties with her. Amelia, our vows have faded into the past. Your troubles are not my own." Her expression turned steely. "Come on, Daniel, after all we've been through?" I laughed, a bitter sound. "After everything? You mean after you deceived me, betrayed my trust, and tried to claim half of what I built? You made me struggle to escape the burden of a child that wasn't even mine." Her face contorted with frustration, yet she pressed on, relentless. "I realize my missteps now, and while you seem to flourish, I find myself in turmoil. Please allow me a moment." I rose, glided to the door, and opened it, stepping out into the night. I imagined she would crumble, perhaps beg for another chance. Instead, her expression turned icy as she whispered, "You'll hear from me." With that, she swept out, leaving a lingering tension in the air. I initially dismissed it as her typical flair for the dramatic, but weeks later, I found myself confronted with a rather unexpected twist. Amelia had taken the bold step of filing a lawsuit against me, asserting that my signature on Chase's birth certificate bound me to ongoing child support obligations. It was utterly astonishing. After all that had transpired, she was still attempting to draw more from me. Yet, this time, I entered the courtroom with my eyes wide open, armed with a formidable lawyer and a heart full of resolve. The hearing unfolded in a different chamber, presided over by a judge who truly listened to the narratives presented. Amelia, with her delicate facade, attempted to embody the role of the forsaken mother, abandoned by a callous man. However, as the inquiries continued to flow, the cracks in her tale began to reveal themselves. "Miss Amelia," the judge interjected, perusing through the documents, "you previously acknowledged that Mr. Daniel is not the biological father. Are you now suggesting something different?" Amelia lingered in uncertainty, her heart racing as the judge's gaze bore down on her. She shifted, a delicate tension in the air. "No, he's not," she finally replied, her voice barely above a whisper. The judge nodded, his eyes flickering to me, a silent exchange charged with unspoken implications. "My dear Mr. Daniel, Do you desire to persist in offering your support to his child? I acted without a moment's pause. With a resigned sigh, the judge reclined in his chair, casting a knowing glance at Miss Amelia. My dear, your argument lacks the weight of legal merit. Mr. Daniel is not the biological father, and he bears no obligation to provide financial support. Furthermore, he has incurred legal fees due to this unnecessary litigation, and you will be required to reimburse him for those costs. Amelia's face drained of color as she snapped, That's not fair. The judge raised an eyebrow, responding, Not fair? You attempted to misuse the legal system to extort money from a man. You deceived this court. It does not reward manipulation. I could see it in her eyes at that moment. She came to the bittersweet realization of her loss, yet rather than surrendering to despair, she ignited with a sudden spark of defiance. With a fierce passion, she lunged at me, her voice a tempest of fury as she called me a bastard. Court security descended upon her in an instant, restraining her as she writhed and unleashed a torrent of curses. The judge, with a stern demeanor, pounded his gavel, declaring her actions utterly unacceptable, and she found herself held in contempt of court. She was sentenced to 6 months in county jail. Amelia's eyes widened in disbelief. No, you can't do this, she protested. But the guards were already escorting her away as she screamed and struggled against their grip. I watched her being dragged from my sight, and an unexpected sensation washed over me, peace. She had made every attempt to ruin me, yet in the end, it was only her own downfall that unfolded. Reflecting on it all, I couldn't help but feel a sense of liberation. I departed with insights that transformed my existence. First, never dismiss the subtle hints. I yearned to believe that Amelia would remain faithful, yet I turned a blind eye to the inconsistencies that whispered otherwise. If ever you sense a discord, heed your intuition. Second, love should never shroud you from the truth. I believed that marriage symbolized unwavering trust, that by offering her my heart, she would safeguard it. Yet, trust is not merely a gift. It is a delicate bond that must be nurtured. It is a delicate dance, one that requires both passion and prudence. I found myself swept away by the intoxicating allure of love, allowing reason to slip through my fingers, which made it all too easy for Amelia to weave her web of deception. While love holds a cherished place in our hearts, it must never overshadow the wisdom of caution. Protecting oneself, both emotionally and legally, is paramount. I was fortunate to act decisively. Had I lingered in guilt or fear, I could have found myself ensnared, burdened with obligations for a child who was not my own. Many men, entranced by affection, fall prey to manipulation, leading them to financial and emotional despair. Always be aware of your rights. Seek the truth before embarking on significant commitments, and remember that love should not lead you into recklessness. Healing is possible, but it requires a conscious choice to embrace the future. I'll confess, Amelia's actions left a mark on my heart, igniting a fire of anger within me. In the depths of my heart, I felt a sting that lingered, a haunting echo of moments past, where I pondered my own missteps. Yet, as I reflected, the revelation dawned upon me. It was not my failure, but hers. I stood at a crossroads, faced with a choice: succumb to the shadows of resentment or embrace the promise of a brighter tomorrow. I have embraced my own journey, and in doing so, I have discovered a newfound serenity. To those who lend an ear, I offer this reflection. There are moments when you believe you have encountered your soulmate, only to awaken to the truth that you are worthy of so much more, and that realization is perfectly valid. Heartache may be fleeting, yet the wisdom gleaned from it can profoundly influence the tapestry of your life. Now, I am curious to hear your thoughts. If you were to uncover that your child was not biologically yours, how would you respond? Could you still embody the role of a father, or would the sting of betrayal prove insurmountable? Do share your thoughts in the comments below. I shall indulge in their pages.